I think one of my favorite memories was in when I was about in the 4th grade, and for the first time I was allowed to go into the library alone. My mother would drop me off, and I was pretty much allowed to stay there for about an hour. The books I loved the most, however, were young adult books that were in the bottom of the library, in the basement. And to get to those books, I had to go past the mystery section. And the mystery section not only had the word mystery, but there was also a skull and crossbones. And that terrified me, but I knew I had to get past that to get to the books that I loved. So I would still myself for a few moments, take a deep breath, and then I would dash into that section, look at the books, read them as quickly as I could, the titles, pick out 2 or 3, and then run back out and then back up into the light. But that memory has stayed with me, and I think also was an indication of how much I loved reading, that I would kind of risk the fear to go there. Because I grew up in a rural area, the library was a place where I could enter another world, other worlds, and I loved to browse the shelves. As I got older, not all the books were down in that basement. I began to read magazines as well, magazines such as National Geographic. I began to read nonfiction, and it was just a place that I spent so many hours. Usually a Tuesday afternoon and a Saturday afternoon, I would be there at least 2 or 3 hours. And as I got older, I continued to go to those libraries, and it was just a memorable experience, but it was also where I first started wanting to be a writer. There was a library in our town named Mrs. Bridges, and she was a person who encouraged reading, and she actually had a list when I was in the 9th grade of 100 great novels, and she posted this, and I was always a very precocious reader. So I'd read several of the books on there, Huckleberry Finn for instance, but I saw a book called Crime and Punishment, and that book interested me, just the title, and so I decided I would try to read it. And I did read it. I did not obviously understand it on the level I would as an adult, but there was a scene early in that novel where a pawnbroker is killed by the central character Raskolnikov. And that scene was so vivid that for the first time in my life, I had always felt like I entered the book, but this was a moment where the book entered me, and I felt that I'd been altered forever. And that really, I think, was the beginning of my writing career in many ways, because it made me want to do something. Could I create something that would have that effect on others? I use the library extensively because I still do a lot of research. We're at the university where I teach. We have a librarian whose main interest is Appalachian studies, Appalachian history. And that's been invaluable to me, because so much of my work, including my new novel, The Cove, is about events that have happened in the 30s and the 1918 era in western North Carolina. So the library continues to be an important place to me, and it's also a place where even today I love to go to the new book section, and sometimes I'll see something that I haven't read a review of or I didn't even know was out there. So it continues to be a place of wonder for me. I find it distressing that libraries are being cut, because I think in many ways they are part of the foundation of what makes a democracy. They allow everyone, no matter your economic status, to have access to great books. And I know from the experience of many of my relatives and of myself that has been the segue to education, to wanting to go on to school, to go on to college, that love of reading. And I find it crucial, as I say, to the kind of country I want to be in, that libraries are seen as an important facet of our country. I'm always disturbed by the attempts to ban books in libraries. I think it shows a lack of faith in the clientele in many ways. That the clientele can choose not to read a book, that's fine, but I do not feel like the clientele has a right to choose what others might read. I think some of the great books that I know of have been banned. I find it distressing that that very often books that at one time we would come to view as classics at one time would be banned. So I find it as an assault on freedom of speech and freedom of thought. My latest project is a book called The Cove. It's set in 1918 in the North Carolina mountains. It's about a little-known aspect of American history. That during World War I, there were German internment camps, not prisoner of war camps. And one of these camps was in the North Carolina mountains. And the novel deals with one of these particular German American citizens who escapes and is hunted down by a man named Chauncey Fife, who I think is very similar to many people today in our country, many politicians who want to instill fear and paranoia of people who may be different.